Hello, my friends. Katie Day with the Moving to Texas team down here in Houston, Texas, here with another episode of the Real Advice Podcast. I am really, really excited to welcome this week's guest to the podcast. She is an absolute badass realtor, mom, U.S. Army veteran. She has over 20 years of experience, has assisted over 1,300 families to buy and sell homes in the real estate industry. She's really well known for her marketing skills, her high level of customer service, providing an absolutely stellar, great client experience, her client events as well, and just, again, being an all around badass. She's an award winning agent, winning like Dallas Business Journal, Real Trends, Brokerage, Coldwell Banker awards and rankings. And on top of that, she decided that that wasn't enough for her. So she picked up her business and moved from the Dallas area to Breckenridge, Colorado, and is now selling real estate in both markets. Please join me in welcoming Keri Emery.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a big intro to live up to. So,
Well, hey, no pressure, no pressure. But you know that I think that you're an absolute badass. You know that you're an absolute badass. So I'm excited to dig in. For those that may not know you, tell me, a little bit about you, about who you are.
I'll make this a short version. Graduated from the University of Oklahoma many, many years ago. Didn't really know what to do with that fancy degree, so I joined the Army and traveled the world, saw some great stuff, saw some scary stuff. Got out of the Army while we were stationed in Hawaii and knew I only had about a year and a half left there on the island. So I thought, well, I don't want to start a career here knowing I'm going to leave in a year and a half. So I went to work for a real estate broker as her assistant. Uh, Great. My office was fabulous. I looked right over into Pearl Harbor every day. So for a veteran, that was pretty emotional every single day at work. And I was, her assistant. I was involved with her clients. I was involved with her closings. Kind of got familiar with the process, and saw these huge $18,000, $24,000 checks coming across the desk. And I'm like, all right, when we get to our next duty station, I'm going to dive into real estate. Well, we landed in Lawton, Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Um, I got my real estate license, and our average sales price there was 70,000. So my checks were much smaller. So the hustle was on.
Yeah,
So I got into coaching right away into my career, and that's back with Mike Ferry at the time.
yeah,
Learned how to prospect. When you move somewhere and you don't know anybody, you prospect, and 48 no's to get me to 2 yeses.
yeah.
So I built a good business, and then after 3 years, went back to the beautiful, great state of Texas, and my career took off from there in Dallas, and built a team, dissolved a team, rebuilding a team,
Yeah.
and then for some reason the snow was calling, and here I am in Breckenridge, Colorado. It's a lovely 22 degrees today, and
That sounds terrible. The 22 degrees part, not anything else. Everything else sounds great about your life and all that, but 22
yeah.
degrees is, you can keep that. I mean, and obviously not a Texan, but being a Texan, right? Like, that's just. I'm wearing a t-shirt and cotton pants right now.
Oh,
That's
the great thing about social media is the memories aspect. And I can remember, I mean, just recently I was looking back on some memories and I was complaining about being below 60 degrees.
yeah.
And
That's
now it almost never reaches 60 degrees here, and maybe in the summer for a few days.
so.
So,
Yeah, no, I mean, and like the summers are great there, but yeah, winters I can go there for a week, come hang out. But yeah, I don't know that I could do it day in and day out. So more power to you there. So did you go to Colorado a lot? Like what prompted like picking up and
uh,
moving your life?
several things. My son moved out here 5 years ago to be a resort junkie. So uh, snowboarding for the first time in his life, working at the resorts, living the good life. So I visited a lot,
Yeah.
and I've never even been to Colorado. But what did it for me was 3 summers ago, I came out for a summer, and just for about a week or so, and drove through that tunnel on a June day, and I literally took my breath away. First of all, there was no humidity, and it was really tolerable, the weather. And so started hiking, started bike riding, and I was like, all right, I can do this. And then I
Yeah.
kind of started diving deep into the real estate portion of it, and learned that 38% of our second home ownership here are Texans.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what started it. Was just a week trip out here during the summer.
Well, the connection, the Texas Colorado connection, I think is pretty strong. In all of the cities up there, but for sure Breckenridge. So what's it like splitting time between two markets? I mean, I know just based on the
Uh,
conversations we've had, that you've
you
been doing it.
know, I reached out to a good friend and coach within the Tom Ferry organization who has done this. Made a lot of notes and did pretty much everything that she said to do. But of course, you don't know what you don't know until you get into it. And man, there's a lot of things I probably would have done differently. There's some things about this community that I didn't know to investigate. Um, there's a saying up here that I'm been faced with a lot lately is like, the mountain life isn't for everybody. And I'm gonna tell you, it's the mountain life itself is great. Embedding yourself into a very, very small community that is very transient, so it's hard to make friends here because the people know most people that come don't stay, so
Yeah.
they don't let you in. They don't let you in their circle.
Yeah.
So that's probably been the toughest part. The real estate market has its own set of rules that's totally different than anything I've ever done. This is a second home resort market.
Yeah.
People when they come up here to look to buy a home, they're also looking in Steamboat and they're
Yeah.
looking in Durango or Park City.
Yeah.
They're not just focused on here. So I had to dig deep into this lifestyle because that's what I'm selling here. I'm not selling just a second home. I'm selling a lifestyle and an opportunity to make memories with their family and all that.
Well, and I mean, I would imagine, right? Because I'm in a primary market for the most part. Like, if it's not an investment and it is just truly a second home, like I would assume that they're coming on vacation or they're coming, like the sense of urgency is probably a lot lower, right?
There's a lot less sense of urgency, and, unlike Dallas, we really didn't have a seasonal market. I mean, we're
Yeah.
busy all the time.
Yeah.
Here, it is kind of seasonal. People will come out here for the winter and say, "Holy crap, I'm paying 700 bucks a night for this condo.
Yeah.
I could buy this, rent it out for the winter, pay for itself, and still enjoy it with my family." And that's probably the most common misconception about buying here is even if you pay cash for a property, you're not gonna cash flow out here. We have new rules in place for renting your property out for short-term rentals. And so what I tell people is, look, you have to set that expectation up front. You're not going to cash flow, especially if you're getting a mortgage,
Yeah.
but you can definitely offset the cost of your enjoyment. So it's a totally different sales technique to get people to understand because they're just like, oh yeah, because $700 a night, that's only out of certain weeks out of the year.
Yeah.
And then it'll drop down, like in January right now, it's, maybe 400 bucks a night.
Yeah.
So it varies by season. And in the summertime, it's really cheap to come out here.
Yeah. Yeah. They're just coming for spring break and feeling
Yeah.
feeling their pocketbook, right? As they're writing that check for
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
Airbnb. Well, they're not writing a check, but you get the
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So what, obviously in getting advice prior to moving and then now doing it yourself and having kind of your would have done this differently, what would be like, a tip or two, right, that you would give to someone if they were planning on moving markets or say, their partner got a job transfer, so they know they're moving. What would be some things that you would say,
Uh,
definitely do this?
that's a great question. I would actually take some time to talk to more than just a couple of real estate agents. If you're going to do real estate in your new market, talk to more than just one or two agents because the first two that I spoke with before I moved out here really glamorized the entire market. And now that I've been here for just over a year, it's there's a lot of sides to this market that's not so glamorous.
Yeah.
And so that, I mean, I'm nothing if I'm not flexible. So I've had to really pivot on quite a few occasions. So that's the first thing. And then understand. So if I were to move from Dallas to Houston, the market's fairly similar,
Yeah.
I mean, mainly primary residence, but being in a second home resort market, I didn't even know what a feeder market was before I moved out here.
Yeah.
Um, so understanding that and having to completely change the way I've marketed myself. When I moved from Lawton to Dallas, and starting out in Lawton and then moving to Dallas and starting over, my bread and butter was for sell by owners and expireds. Well, guess what? The market we're in because my market here is
Yeah.
no different than yours. No, you don't have any expireds, you
Yeah.
know, and you know how it is working with the FISBO in any hot market in any city in the country. They don't they don't need realtors, or they don't think they need realtors.
Yeah.
But so that's been the biggest challenge. So I've had to really shift my business concept to agent referrals, and I've never actively pursued that type of lead gen. But for the last 8 months, it's proven to be incredibly successful here.
Yeah. Well, and being so involved, like, in the coaching community and in, your brokerage community and in different things, like that tends to happen, right? Like just
Mhm.
naturally. But obviously in moving to a new market, that's definitely something to lean on, as you're gaining more market knowledge and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
think too, I guess in not talking to enough agents prior to you moving, like I think some of it probably too is like a little bit of ego, right? Like they don't want to tell you the bad stuff. It's like, oh no, like I'm really successful, things are going well, this is great, right? But
Yeah.
potentially, I
Uh,
guess didn't.
and you know what? In looking back, maybe some of the things that they said were super helpful, but you don't get it if it's not familiar to you.
Yeah.
There are roughly 500 agents in my MLS here, and I came from a market of 47,000.
That, you saw my face when you said that. I'm like, oh, that's cute. That's cute. We've
Yeah.
got yeah.
And last year in 2021, there were a total of 2,327 homes sold in my county.
Yeah.
So if you divide that by 500, that's roughly 4.2 sales per agent.
But
Most, yeah, well, most agents here are happy with their one or two or three sales a year
yeah.
because they live for those days on the mountain. I mean, they work through the summer, they make their money, and then they can ski or snowboard every every freaking their first chair every day. I
Yeah.
mean, and for someone like me, that's a completely foreign concept to me. I'm like, I'm still on the hustle,
Yeah.
and just like I did in Dallas.
Yeah.
So a lot of agents are perfectly happy with their 2 or 3 deals a year, and kudos to them for embracing this laid back lifestyle.
Yeah.
Um, I've now learned that for me being 24/7 go 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 in Dallas and not as go go here, I I got to find that balance, and I'm still looking for that. But a full year here now, and my business is really picking up and going in a great trajectory. So I'm think I'm going to find that balance now. Of course, going back to Dallas every couple of weeks, it brings its own challenges too.
Well, and I mean, kudos to you because I'm friends with a lot of people in your Dallas office, right? Like on Facebook and everything.
Mhm.
So like I'm seeing you tagged in things quite frequently, or you being on their posts of like, hey, look at the top agents for the office, look at the number one agents for the office. And like every single month, you're still one of the number one agents, in the Dallas office too. So like congratulations to you on that. Cause I know that's no small feat.
Um,
I know you built a great business in
you
Texas as
know,
well.
I'm just as surprised as you are. When
I'm not
when
surprised.
every time she because my I don't post those things. My broker does, or my
Yeah.
manager does, and she'll say, "Do you want this posted?" I'm like, "What? I was in the top predict what?"
Yeah.
And so I'm like, "Heck yeah, go ahead, let's post it." I have a lot of help in Dallas. I couldn't do it without the the team members that I have there, but it's also because of the relationships I built with my clients. Uh, they all know that I'm working both markets, and I was super hesitant to tell.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what a big mistake that was. I kind of kept it a secret for about the first 7 or 8 months because I didn't want to lose my Dallas business
Yeah.
while I was building this business. But when I went back last summer and was on appointments and started telling people, because I wanted them to hear it from me face to face. I wanted them to read it on Instagram or Facebook. I felt like I owed them that face to face conversation.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh man, my boss just bought a $4 million property." I'm like, "What?" So then I thought,
Yeah.
all right, this
Got it.
this
Let me yes.
this isn't working well. So I'm like, now I'm just telling everybody because, like, with knowing that the bulk of our business here comes from Texas, what that was stupid for me to yeah. I learned.
Um, yeah, you live and you learn.
Yeah.
Um, so one of the things I know that, because we've talked about it, that you do a lot of or did a lot of oh, that is a terrible water cup. God, that is
Hey man,
so
I
ugly.
look. I almost cried the other night and was so emotionally torn. But I mean, look, I'm going to repeat. My nephew said this. I didn't choose the Cowboys, man. They chose me. I was born into that football club.
So for those of you that are listening and not watching, she's drinking out of like a Yeti mug with a huge Dallas Cowboys star on it. For those of you that don't know, I grew up in Maryland, and that is near DC. So I am a Washington, I won't use vulgar language on this show, Washington football team fan. Never liked Cowboys, never will. Anyways, one of the things that you're known for, Keri, is client events. And I know you do like a big wine event, you do dinners, you do different things with clients. What advice would you give to someone? I think people look at agents that have been in the business for, 2, 3, 5, 10, 15 years that have these huge spheres and huge past client, databases and the income to do these events, right? So they look at these events that you're throwing and wine tasting and stuff like, man, like I could maybe buy a box of Franzia and invite my friends over. But like, what advice would you give to like a new agent that's like, hey, I want to start doing events? Like, what were some things you
So
did?
the first thing is, don't think that you have to have a big database to do it. I mean, even if you just have 10 people and their spouses or significant others, that's plenty to start with. And when you're starting that small, go ahead and invite people that you want to also be a client. I mean, when I first started doing this and my database was much smaller, I would invite people that neighbors or people who just ask me about real estate. They may not even be in the market, but they've
Yeah.
asked me a question. So, hey, come on over. I want you to come to this event. It's going to be super fun. So, don't think that any number is too small. And it has grown to the point to where, look, I also get help. I get help from my vendors. I'm
Yeah.
not afraid to say, look, I don't say I'm loyal to you all these years. I just say, hey, can you help me out with this? And there's a mutual feeling there, like, yeah, sure, how much money do you need? So I get help to pay for the event. And I look for places like me getting that model home in Dallas. Um, I that was just a pure luck thing, that this builder let me host this party in this, $1 million property for free. But it also got exposure to him. I mean, every one of those people in that room was a luxury client. So, um, get help. Don't think that any number is too small of a number. Don't feel like you have to have 100 people on your invite list because I'm going to tell you, the bigger the party, it's harder to make your rounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but it's gotten to the point now to where, I don't know who else is going to be watching this, but so last November when I was back in Texas and giving out some of my pies, right? I
Yeah.
don't deliver pies. I've got a lot of friends that deliver pies. Dallas is too big for me to deliver all those pies, right? So I host an open house in my office and invite all my clients to come and have pies. Well, prior to the pandemic, I would have multiple different events throughout the year. Different clients would get invited to different events, and a couple and since COVID, I couldn't have big parties, right?
Yeah.
So I just like, okay, I'm just gonna invite everybody to the pie thing now instead of breaking it up. So
Yeah.
this couple was sitting there and we were talking, have a nice conversation, and this other couple comes in and is like, oh, Keri, we just love getting our pie from you every year. And then poor Martha looked up and she's like, Keri, this is the first time we've ever gotten a pie. I was like, oh God. So I was like, you
Oops.
weren't on the pie list before, you're on the party list. And now I'm just
That's funny. Yeah, no, that's I guess you got to figure out, if you invite everyone to everything or some people to something.
Yeah. So, and used to, I was a little more mindful of that, but it's just we had to we had to pivot pretty quickly and make some pretty big changes in the way we did things over the last 2 years. So, that being said, but now I've got clients who I was out delivering client stuff in Dallas this last Christmas, and I had a client said, I've got a great idea for your next event, but only if you're inviting me. So, she gave me a great idea that I'm going to have this summer in Dallas. So,
Nice.
yeah.
That's exciting. No, and I think that the biggest takeaway there with the client events is one, sponsorship, right? And having other vendors assist with the cost and help
Mhm.
offset the cost. But two is that like the bigger the party, the fewer people you're going to be able to talk to. And that's we normally do ours. It's like it's my clients, it's my team's clients. So we're inviting hundreds of people. And
Mhm.
like, I think that also when you're inviting that many people, it's difficult to get in touch with everyone to see if they're coming, one. And then two, when they're all there, you know, it's very like, hey, what's up? Oh man, I'm getting pulled over here, and I always try to, if I'm like, hey, I want to spend time with Keri, like, hey, let's talk for a little bit. And then I'll pull out my phone and be like, let's go get coffee. When are you free? Let's go grab a drink. Let's go
That's
hit
exactly
happy
right.
hour and hit that,
Yeah.
next appointment. Right.
Yeah, so that's why I try to keep my party, in my party attendees at least small enough that I can communicate. I'd say the hardest party that I had communicating was when I rented that suite at Lone Star Park and invited a bunch of clients to come bet on the horses for a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was hard because you've got the excitement from the horse races, and
Oh
then of
yeah.
course you've got an open bar, and then you've got everybody trying to compare who they're betting on their next race. That was fun, but it was hard.
I was gonna say, I was like, I'm sure that you were feeling that stress, but I'm like, I'm sure that everyone had a blast because
Oh,
that just sounds like fun.
that was a really great event, but it was hard for me, yeah, for sure.
If you weren't a real estate agent, what do you think you would be doing?
You're too young to probably remember this show, but when I was growing up, there was this TV show called oh shoot, yeah, of course I can't even remember that. Anyways, about a bunch of 30-year-olds that were in the advertising business. So that's what I majored in college
Okay.
was mass communications with an emphasis in advertising. And so somehow my entire life I've always felt like I'd be serving the public in some capacity. So
Yeah.
advertising is what I majored in. Um, I actually still, I mean, I see print ads, I see television ads, and I'm always like, I would have done it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Uh, so I guess that bugs in me. So probably stay in advertising. Of course, when I was 9 years old, I wanted to be a flight attendant. So
Well, you
then
do fly a lot, so
I
you're kind of doing that, now.
I when I did my year-end recap of all of my travel expenses, I'm like, I mean, I moved up 2 levels with American Airlines in their priority level. So I was like, that's pretty exciting.
Hey, I actually have an American Airlines credit. We may need to talk off the podcast of me just like, selling it to you to book your next flight because
Yeah, yeah.
I'd have to fly to Dallas to fly to Mexico if I wanted to use it. So it
Are
may
you
not be.
serious? Well, that's
Well, I was trying to get back. Well, I was trying to get back from Kentucky and we were like, our flight got canceled. So we were furiously trying to get away to get back. So I booked a
mhm.
flight from Kentucky to Dallas and I was trying to fly, so it's a whole thing. So I've got like an $800 American credit now. So I've got to figure out
Wow.
where to use it.
Well, we can certainly help you with that.
Yeah, I'll figure
But
something out.
but for me in Dallas, American was that was our hub. So
Yeah.
I flew American for everything. So now I'm actually signed up for United Airlines
Okay.
because, a matter of fact, when we go to Vegas next week, American's always my go-to, but now I'm having to fly United because
Yeah.
I'd have to fly from Denver to Dallas to Vegas, and that's just silly.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's funny.
yeah.
So what was I gonna say? So I know that you had said previously when you first started out, you were doing a lot of like, kind of cold calling, prospecting, FISBOs, stuff like that. Now with your business in Dallas and then obviously here, what would you say are the main like lead sources or lead pillars that you're relying on?
Uh, well, believe it or not, I've got uh, there's a few expired. So first of all, so here in Breck, I'm still on that hunt because that's what I'm good at. I'm good at just picking up the phone and calling people.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm actually now on my second appointment with. Oh my God, this is crazy. This expired here in Breck, $5 million listing, right? So it's a pretty sweet house.
Yeah.
I looked up the owner's name in the tax rolls. Turns out he lives in Scottsdale, Arizona, right? So of
Okay.
course I called my friend in Scottsdale, top luxury agent there, and I'm like, by any chance, do you know this guy?
Yeah.
And she said, I don't, but I live 10 minutes away from him. Do you want me to go knock on his door? And I was like, no, not yet. But hold that. So then I looked him up on LinkedIn. Turned out he was a CEO of several IT companies in Dallas. Several of my clients worked for his company, and I'm like, this is going to be fabulous.
You've got so many connections here.
This is going to be such an in with this guy. So called all of my past clients, and none of them knew him personally because he was a CEO and they were
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
at that level. So then I did some research and found the last property he owned in Plano. And so then I called that listing agent. And I said,
You're a detective is what you are, but
yeah, I know
continue.
it was almost scary. And I did have some help. I'm not going to mention names of who helped me with this investigation, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had some help. Anyway, so I ended up calling the listing agent and I said, by any chance, do you have a great relationship with Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so? And he said, yes. And I'm like, well, their listing just expired in Breckenridge. It's been on the market 6 times with 6 different agents in 6 years.
Oof.
And I said, if you can help me get connected with them, I'll pay you a referral fee. So he did. We did. Now they're coming out. I'm actually meeting with them the day I get off the plane coming back from Vegas.
That's impressive.
It was fun.
Not like you're like, oh, I'm not worried about calling people. That's not even calling people. That is like straight up detective work. I'm impressed. Most people are like, let me plug it into Vulcan and see if a number comes out. And like, obviously, a CEO doesn't have this publicly listed
First thing I
number.
did, of course, and nothing pulled up. So I thought,
Yeah,
but I just felt I had a connection with this guy because he's from Plano.
yeah,
I'm from Plano.
yeah,
Anyway, so that was pretty fun. So and when you get something that gives you results like that, that's just to me a little push to just all right of these other. And look, it's funny. I got them right here. Here's all my expires from the last 3 years.
yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I wonder how many more experiences like that I can have when I, start chasing these people down.
Well, and I mean, I think there's a few takeaways there. Like one of them being like that a lot of the age, if the average agent sells 4 homes, which we know it's not, like there's a bunch of people selling one, some people selling, lots of homes, right? And then, a few agents that pay for their dues because they like going to broker opens and, having a real estate license, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
I don't think that there's probably a lot of people that are willing to put in that work. So like you having that experience, being able to say like, hey, I specialize in homes that didn't sell, and this is what we can do to get your
right,
home sold.
yeah,
I'm sure a lot of those, especially because like they're just coming up in the winter, enjoying it, coming up for a week or two in the summer, I'm
yeah.
sure they would sell for the right price. That's awesome.
Well, in this particular house is 8,100 square feet, and we have a few of those here, and
Yeah.
basically their families outgrown. They don't use the house anymore.
Yeah.
They used it when their kids were little, and now that their kids are married and have kids, and they're beach people now, they're not mountain people. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, it's exciting. I can't wait to hear about it. All right. I've got a question that does stump a lot of people. So I'm
Okay,
going to hit you with it.
I'm
If
ready.
it. If it were your last meal on earth, what would you be eating?
Okay, I ordered this in Dallas at the summit at Omni last year, and I never had bad luck with it until this last time. Normally, I would say the black and blue uh, ribeye from Bob's Steakhouse because that is literally the best steak I've ever had. But the last time I ordered it, it wasn't well. But I'm going to tell you, I've never said no to a cheeseburger. So I'd have to choose my last meal. I'm going to go with a cheeseburger and some truffle fries.
Oh, I'm a burger fan. I'm also a steak fan. The last podcast I shot, they went into fine detail on the type of ribeye that they would eat, and I was like, oh, I'm hungry. But yeah, no, I'm definitely a burger and steak person for sure.
People get stumped on that.
Some people have been, yeah. They're like, oh, well, the
Right.
last thing I ate was a turkey
Yeah.
sandwich, so that's what that's what
So
I would do.
you haven't asked me this question, but it was on the list of questions. And I want you to know that I have really pondered if you were to ask me this question, how you're going to answer it. And I've
What is it?
pondered
Which
it.
one was it?
I've pondered it so much that now I want to voluntarily answer this question
Sounds
because
good. Hit me.
I I see it a lot in this industry, and I want to touch on it. So I've worked my tail off from the beginning, right? And when I finally reached that point, and you're going to laugh when I tell you the year, in 2009, at that time was my best year ever.
Okay.
The real estate market was crumbling,
Yeah.
but I was still crushing it. And that was the first year that I actually think I ranked in like the top whatever of my company. And then over the next couple of years, I started ranking number 1 in my company, number 10 in Dallas, top 200 in Texas. I made the Real Trends list, which back then I didn't even think that was a thing. I thought it was kind of made up, and it was a big deal. Um, and I developed an ego,
Okay.
and I never thought I had an ego before. And I didn't realize that I started becoming a little wrapped up in my success, wrapped up in my head.
Hmm.
Um, I wasn't even that easy to work with, and I have a reputation in Dallas for being really easy to work with. Um, and I can remember this like it was yesterday. I was in my car driving through Plano. My son was in the car with me, and an agent, I had her on the speakerphone. And when we hung up, my son said, "You were incredibly rude to her." And of course, I tried to justify it. And I'm like, "Well, she's been difficult this whole transaction. She deserved it." And he said, "How about the high road, mom?" And he was like 14. Yeah,
And
and I was like,
and a teenager, you're like, oh,
yeah,
that
I'm like,
hurts.
I was just checked by a 14-year-old,
Yeah.
and so I thought about that for so long, and I thought, you know what, he's right. This success could be gone in a second. Um, and regardless of whether it is or isn't, getting getting that wrapped up into my head, that's not good for anybody. It's not good for my sellers. It's not good for my buyers. It's not good for me. And so I think, and it's the shocking thing is, I mean, it can happen without you even knowing it. It can sneak into your head, and you're out there portraying this total diva attitude, and that's not the best way to go. It's not the best way to do about your business.
Yeah.
But the key point of that is that my son checked me, but then the flip side of that is, like, 2 weeks later after we closed, I found out from somebody that that particular agent, her husband had just passed away, left her with no life insurance policy, and that one deal was her immediate survival.
Yeah.
And I thought, all right, this is going to totally change my attitude back to where I'm back to a I take the high road. I bite my tongue a lot. I may hang up and cuss you like a sailor, but you're not going to know it.
Yeah.
But I want to say I see that so much in this industry, and that is the saddest thing for me, because I thought, you know what, at the end of the day, it's how you treat people is going to go far above and beyond anything else that you do.
100%. 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah. You never really know what's going on,
yeah,
behind
yeah,
the scenes or on the other side for sure.
yeah. So that was the thing that I was up until midnight thinking about, was what is the biggest mistake that I've made in this industry? And that had to be it.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. I think that that's huge. And I think a lot of times the problem that people have is they put themselves in the transaction, right? And like we're
Mhm.
just the facilitators. We're not buying or selling it. I mean, you
Right.
may be, right? But we're not buying or selling, it's it's always best to work in your client's best interest and not be an asshole while you're doing it, right?
Yeah, yeah. Look, it's easy to flip that switch, because look, some of these agents out there test me, man. They're testing my ability to take the high ground.
Yeah. No, I hear
Um,
you.
but after knowing that, someone is always watching you, someone is always picking up on what you're doing, and for it to come from my 14-year-old kid, and then knowing the effects of what that other agent was going through on her end, and
Yeah.
that was a complete game changer for me and my career, and that was probably 7, 8 years ago.
Well, congratulations on raising such a great kid though.
Oh, he has his moments.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But a 14-year-old to be like, that was kind of rude. Like, I mean, obviously he probably didn't say that so nicely, but
It was like, that was rude, mom. It's like he was embarrassed for the lady on the agent on the other end of the phone. Um, but anyway, that was a very valuable lesson for me. And so now, it doesn't matter how many times my manager posts on my success. I Humility is key,
yeah.
and being kind, is even bigger. So
100%, 100%. Well, Keri, thank you so much for taking some time today to chat. Always good catching up. I love chatting with you and hanging out. Looking forward to seeing you here in person soon, and hopefully
I'm gonna
next
see
time.
you. I'm telling you, I've got an alert on my phone. I am calling you within 45 minutes of me getting off that plane.
I can't
So,
wait. I can't wait to link up. I'm excited to see you in person, give you a
yeah.
squeeze, and just catch up. So
Katie, thanks
thank
for
you.
having me on. I just look, you're such an inspiration to all of us, even us old timers in the industry. I mean, you're shaking things up, man. You're changing the way things are done, and it's super encouraging, inspiring. So I keep doing it because, I've only done that one reel that you told me how to do, just that one. Um,
Well, we'll shoot some more in Vegas. That's my
you're on.
promise to you.
You're on.
All right. Cool. I will see you
All
soon.
right.
Thanks so
All
much.
right. Thanks, Katie. Talk to you soon.